And tilt brush on the front. Okay, so hi, hi, hi. Hope no one's making funny faces at me right now. All right. Okay, move stick. Awesome, great. So let's do. Okay, so I have this thing right here. Let's erase it real quick and start with meaning and purpose. Say clear. Okay. So you guys have seen how to save and everything. I'm gonna paint this, and it's gonna be a coin, right? It's money. Cool, right? So we can throw money around. That'd be fun. And but just to get an idea of how these things export, for better or for worse, let's find like tape. Like tape. So I don't know, maybe our, and let's change colors. Cool. And we use a little tape around the edge. There we go. Something that has even more opacity settings. Let's see. Splatter. That sounds like it would have. Let's make it nice and dirty money. There you go. Very dirty money. Cool. Cool. So that's enough for us to test. If I wanted to save, I can save the sketch. Press trigger. Cool. It flies down somewhere else. All right. So if I go over to here, camera, undo, export, teleport. Where is the other features? Advanced. Library. Changed on me. Quick, somebody search for tilt brush exporting. More options. There we go. Labs. So did you see all that? I went to advanced mode. And then over to this more options right here, the dot 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 is labs, and here's where export is. You can do a Twitch chat, you can do something else, but I can export. Okay, because I haven't given this a name, it's going to be called untitled. And there, I have now an FBX file format on my hard drive. If you can find it, it's freaking out there for a second. Anyway, so that's all we need for the VR headset 4 for the next little bit. Let me close it out. And so here's my project right here, and I've created now a new folder. I always create a new folder. My project is called Imports. It's kind of like a standard thing. These are where we're going to store everything in case we need to find them later. Even though it's going into the engine, if we want to change a mesh and re-import it, we know where to find it. It's now with the rest of our project, right? It's just a folder I created, and I have some textures in there right now. What I need to do is find that tilt brush file and then bring it to my imports folder. So let's go navigate to it. I think it goes to the same place your screenshots go to, which would be tilt brush, and then exports. There's untitled because I didn't give it a name, right? And in there it has little PNG files for those different textures that we had, and then it has the FBX file, which is a standard file format that's made by Autodesk. It's just like an OBJ or a Collada. These are, but it can store cameras and lights and media. So it's the standard by which we'll be using the most for asset import and export. So I'm just going to take this whole folder and bring it into my imports folder. All right, and I've already opened up. I don't need this anymore. Just put it on the ground real quick. And I don't need the headset to look at this. All right. So in my assets folder, I made a folder last week called meshes, but I didn't bring anything in there. I'm gonna make a little subfolder because I'm gonna use this project for the rest of the semester. So I want to make sure it's organized as I go along. You can see how they get messy pretty quickly sometimes. And let's import. So from my project, imports, there it is. And I'm just going to import all 4 of these. The JSON has metadata. It like tells us information about color and stuff like that, but it's also embedded inside the FBX file. All right. I'm just going to do the default right now. And what it has is each of the meshes was each of the different materials is its own mesh. I could have chosen to combine them when I brought them in as one of the settings, but there's no need to do that. So let's start taking a look at some of the materials. Okay, so we have light, which was that first blue color I did. Then it has splatter, which was a splatter, right? And then it has the duct tape. Let's open these up and start messing around with them. Cool. So the main thing to note is that it's brought in a texture for both color and opacity. Right? We've used both of these so far already, and also emissive. And if we go search for the splatter and open it up, we see that it's composed of these kind of textures, okay? But what we're getting is just a white texture. All right, if I flatten it out so you can see, it's just a white texture. And this is the first step, is to know that these nodes, this is all the information, R, G, B, and A. And then you see how they separate out R, G, B, and A. We actually want the alpha, not the color. So there you go. That's how that's supposed to look. So that's the first step. And the second step is, obviously we don't need the color. We don't need the image for the color. We need to get the actual color. And it should embed it. Otherwise, we could just recreate it. Well, that one didn't come in. Let's see if it works in the other ones. They change this all the time, and we can just recreate the color. Let's see this one. And I'll go ahead and do this one too. All right. So there's our tape, or duct tape. And that's actually the tape, right? See that texture? And so those are brought in there. Let's multiply real quick and see if that works. Let's see if that works. Okay. There's a trick for getting the color out of here, and I'll find that out later and send it to you guys. I'll make it I'll append it in. Let's see if we can multiply real quick. Save. Cool, I'll just multiply it one end. So I'm going to hold down 3 and click. And my splatter was like a pink. Duct tape was like a white, yellowish white. Wake up. Cool, and this was a blue. No problem. And also, they were kind of glowy too, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in the emissive. And now we have tool brush assets. And I'm going to go ahead and save everything. So now if we just drag all three in. So it's scaled at 100% smaller than it needs to be. So it's tiny. So I can delete it or re-import it, or if I come down here to the import, I can actually change the transform of the import here to be 100. 100. Good thing I made that mistake, so now we can see it. If I hit F, it should align it somewhere. Is it underneath? Or is it way off center somewhere? Let's find the other ones. Uniform scale 100. Bring it in. If not, I will delete it and I'll just start from scratch. Transform 100 and re-import. 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 Let's see. It's got the material on it. Let's make these materials double-sided. Alright, I see something in here. There's a thumbnail. Let's bring it to the world. There it is. There's our money. Cool. So you notice that that pivot point's off, right? Because it's I drew it up here, and 0, 0, 0 is where the pivot point is. You can actually move the pivot point so it's in the center. So I think if I right click, I can say pivot and set pivot. We can change that so that we can grab it around. But that's like a new feature. The old-fashioned way of doing it is just putting it into a blueprint, because I ultimately want to pick this piece of money up and throw it. Right? I want to toss money around, and right now they're not parented to each other. So I'm going to create a blueprint for coin. And I can just drag and drop into my components from here. So now you see another reason why we use blueprints, not just for interactivity, but for organization. So there it is, and I can offset them. Let's do them all at one time. One time. Edit. Okay, you're there, and you're there. Great. So I'm just gonna move them down, and now they're gonna be centered. Easy enough. So my coin is now here. And this is, the blue circle is just a way of being able to pick up the blueprint. So I can make that bigger or smaller. That's just a null or a default scene root, and it actually has scale, so I can make it smaller if it was in the way. Cool. So now it's all paired together. But let's take a look at these collisions and see how they're auto-generated inside of. There we go. It was here all along. So those are actually not the worst collisions. It's a weird object, right? Because it's sculptural, right? It's not on a flat surface, so it has some depth to it. But if this was too complicated, and I've created some crazy ones, right? When you're drawing really big meshes, it'll create one giant box around it. You have to just go ahead and delete your collisions and kind of draw it from scratch. And granted, this might have been the problem you were having, or it might not have been. But we could build these out of a capsule or a sphere. I could probably use a sphere and like flatten it out if I wanted to. So let me like remove collisions, and well, here's the auto tool. We should show that. So go down to collisions. We could say auto, do it, apply. See what that looks like. So that looks a little more like intuitive if it was going to be a bunch of different objects, right? Or we could do just a sphere to keep it simple because that's a lot of calculations there. Let's just do, and you can build it out of smaller components. And this thing has its own transforms, right? I don't want to just do one. That's funny. I don't think disk is an option. Anyway, that's fine for me. It's going to roll around. And so I'll do it for the other pieces, or I don't have to because they're on the inside. So the collision will be keep them together. Cool. So this is something we're going to bat around later on. I just wanted to kind of talk about tilt brush first and show you the opacity stuff and show you can bring that stuff in. Why is my dollar sign invisible? I think it's because let's go back to, instead of making this translucent, I'm going to switch it to just masked, so it'll be a little bit easier to see. So it's not going to have a grayscale translucency. It's going to have either on or off based off of the edge texture, and it'll be easier to see. Now you see it a lot easier. Cool. So we're talking a little bit more about materials. So I want to show you my favorite material to make. Let me close some of these windows up. It's called a Fresnel. Has anyone ever heard of a Fresnel lens before? No? So Fresnel is a super thin kind of lens. It's what's used in, actually used in lighthouses. It's like what I use in the top of the lighthouse for the light there. And you could only see it when you're completely on the side of it. Only when you're looking at it from the edge. It used to be something you couldn't do in real time, and something that we could do now in real time. So let's go find our instances from, maybe there's a different project. Oh, here we are. Here's our instances. If you remember these guys. We're going to take this idea and add a little bit more complexity to it. Let me save all. Or we'll just hang out in this little area, and those guys can be chilling out over there, and we'll do new ones. Let's do spheres this time, because this works best on spheres. Let's find that. Find the master. Cool. So I really like this one, but I don't want to make an instance of it. I want to do something kind of completely different, so I'm just going to copy it. And call it Color Fresnel. Cool. And what it does is it kind of lerps between two different values. So I have this purple, and I'm gonna search for Fresnel. It's actually spelled Fresnel, but us in the know to call it Fresnel. And then, as I said before, we're going to kind of use it to transition between two different colors. So as a linear interpolate. So the other color can be, it doesn't matter. It could be blue. It could be something on the complete other side of the wheel. And let's hook them up. And I said yellow. And pow. Oh, see how the edge is yellow? Has a really nice soft, like pastel kind of look to it. It's really cool. But we want to be able to drive these parameters, and I want to be able to change these colors at will. So it's going to be, I'm going to rename this scalar to be inside color. And I'm doing it all in caps for some reason, so I'm like yelling inside color, and then convert that to a parameter, and this is outside. Right, so when I make the instances, I'll be able to see which one is which. And then here, I want to change some of these numbers. They have a default number of 5 and 0.04. Right? If I right-click and say promote to a parameter, it's going to automatically name it, but it doesn't give it that default value, unfortunately. I think the default was 5. And then this was 0.04. So if you can figure out a ways of like incorporating this into any of your materials, you can add it into anything. It has a really cool look to it. But it also works for opacity. So let's see what these numbers do real quick. Let's throw it on. Let's make an instance. And throw it on. All right, there we go. And let's see what these numbers do. So we obviously know what the inside and outside numbers do, but let's try this. So this one is kind of like the fall off. 0.04 is the default. And this one determines how big the inside sphere is. Cool. Some interesting settings there. And then there's another thing called normal. There's also normals on here. I'm going to start talking about what a material is in Unreal. It's called a physically based material, or a PBR. And it's a combination of all these other nodes we've been ignoring so far, where you can do things like bake in shadows, which is called ambient occlusion. And you can talk about normals, which is the way that the polygons are actually reflecting light. And we're going to mess around with adding in a little bit of normals, a normal map into this Fresnel. So I'm going to make a parameter for this one as well, called normal, and it's empty. Actually, I can take that out for a second. Let's do this a different way. Let me bring in normal. So I'm going to search on the scary internet, and I'm going to look for a word called tileable. And I'm going to say tileable water normal. And so this information, this weird purple and like it's basically blue and red and mixed together. It's talking about, you can see how it has a look of depth. It's really going to add some more detail to these meshes, even though they're just going to be boxes or spheres. Right? This is a way of cheating and adding more detail without having to actually model the geometry. This one looks pretty cool. Maybe not the best resolution. Any of them will work. I'm being picky. I'll move on. And of course I have to like now visit the websites because Google doesn't let us just steal the images. I thought I was doing. This one. It's changed how it's done in the past like few months. But I could take a screenshot. I could, cause this is going to say HTML document now. They had to change it. There you go. Booyah. And so I'm going to put it to my imports folder. That's not human readable. And I meant to put it in my imports folder. Under, that's fine right there. So let's bring it in. And move this back to be, let's make this mast. I'm just going to drag and drop again. I don't know if I can go in here. Can I do that? Yes, I can. You see that? Right, you can also put it over here, but if I want to have transparency, this is the way to add normals to it. So it's like a glass kind of material. Cool. And then we can have fun with, there's a thing called a panner. And we can have fun with making the water ripple. By default, it's there's no speed on X and Y. I'll do a little bit of speed. And these, of course, could be parameters as well that you can drive and instance and all that kind of stuff. Cool. Just a couple of nodes, you can get some really cool things going on. The one last thing I want to do is I want to do the same kind of thing with Fresnel, but I want to do it for opacity because I want to make it like it's a little ball of glass, right? So I only need black and white information for this one, so I'm just going to use the single digits 0 and 1. And then I'm going to lerp again. Hold down L and click, it'll have a lerp. So inside color, outside color, and I want to linearly interpolate. It's the way, because it will be incorporated into the Fresnel and not into the material itself. But mess around with it, and we can definitely take a look at it. It'll have two different kinds of looks. Where'd you go? Did the whole thing just disappear? Let's go out of here. Oops, made the whole thing invisible. There we go. Cool. And I can go over here to this, and because it has a similar name, I want to separate it from the other one. So I'm going to make a new category called alpha for this one, and then I want to make for these two, I want to make a color category. And do 5, default of 5, and make it part of the alpha. So now when I come over to this instance, you see there's two different categories. Oh, I have to save it first for it to do that. Now we have color and alpha, right? Two different categories, and I can make it less or more transparent. Cool. Cool. So that's Fresnel. normal maps. We got panning. So let's go to a thing called bitmap to material. So this was a company called Algorithmic. Oops, to material. And they make a thing called Substance Painter and Substance Designer. And they were just bought by Adobe like a month ago. So I wasn't sure if it was going to be part of my Creative Cloud or if I had to buy a new license. And I found out that if you give them a picture of your NYU ID, you get all their products for free. So I found that out right before class. So that's good. So I have it installed on my computer. Just go over to you have to like sign up, and then in your profile put your NYU picture of NYU ID. So bitmap to material is a kind of a weird way of reverse engineering from a single image from Google, which I now know how to download thanks to Carla. We can use this even more effectively. So I'm going out into the world again, and I'm looking again for the term tileable, because I want it to be seamless. All right, it's seamless repeating. And then I'm going to do one called, I like stones. Stones are fun. Texture. And we're going to get back, because I said tileable, you're going to get a lot of things that are going to be used specifically for game engines. If I want a certain resolution, of course, I need to go to like the tools section and size. Now, it's not as important as it used to be, but sizes in video games are stored in a certain way, and they're usually powers of 2. Not powers of 10, powers of 2. It's 256 by 256, 512 by 512, 1024 by 1024. This stuff isn't as important anymore for processing, but it's still how you'll find textures out in the wild. So if I want a certain resolution, I want to do 2048 by 2048. And specifically, these things will be for game engines. Be careful with these images, because if you do 4K for no reason to something that don't get close to, there's no need to do that kind of resolution. Only do high resolution if you're going to really be inspecting what that image is. So this was pretty cool. I'm going to, as we all know, I'm going to open the images in a new tab. And there's my stone. Save image, my imports. And I'm going to put a bitmap to material. And this thing is kind of like auto magic. You don't have to do much or anything at all, really. Algorithmic. I don't want the trial. I want the real thing. I wonder if the bitmap to... Oh, well. If the trial is going to have watermark, maybe I did it on the desktop computer in there. Okay, it looks like it's not the trial. Great. So we have this little box here we can see out in the real world. And I can take this image, and I'm going to just drag it in. Cannot open. All right. Let's do the one I did before. It's having some sort of DirectX issue. Let's do this again. Let's do that. Okay. So it says, which one do I want to load it in? We're just doing color. We're starting with color. We could have started with the normal, and it would try to generate all these other maps from the normal. But I wanted to try to figure out how to do normals, bake in ambient occlusion, which again is the shadows that you can bake in, so you're not trying to calculate shadows in real time, some metallic properties, and some emissive stuff. So there it is. Unfortunately, I think I have the trial right now, so it has a watermark. I promise you that I have a license for it. So we'll have a watermark for today's demo. And then you have some properties for each different map. The only thing I ever do is I add a little bit of grunge sometimes. Add a little dirt, because these images are like really, really clean, and this helps break up a little bit of the tiling as well. So you have all these different settings, and they add just a little bit of smudge to them so they're not so bright and shiny and new. And then I just say, it's only got 2 buttons really. It's like import and export. So I export, and where do you want to export it to? What kind of file do you want it to be? PNG, JPEG, Targo, whatever you want, it's all fine. And it's going to make all these different nodes that we can then plug into that material tab to make something that looks, look at that. That's just one polygon on that side of that cube. Let's see how much depth we've added by adding photoreal textures. Right, so this is going to start making, you can try to break this too and make non-photorealistic things as well. But I have actually already exported it when I was not in the trial, so I'll just use these ones. This is what it spits out, a whole bunch of crap, and I'll bring it in. I'm going to go to my textures, and I'm going to say rock texture. And I don't need all these. I'm just going to drag in the ones that actually have information. Cool. And let's make material out of it. The naming convention is m_stone. And then let's bring them all in. Cool. Cool. And if there's any hesitation of like which one's which, they're all named. It like appends the name of what they are to the end. So this one literally says something 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 ambient occlusion, and again that's where you bake in shadows, so that it doesn't have to calculate shadows. If we take a look at it, like if it intuitively figures out these things are more recessed and these things are more in the front. It's really a genius piece of software. Obviously, color is color. Roughness is roughness. And depending on how I do the settings, these it would have more or less of these nodes that you can plug into everywhere. This one's height. That's roll position offset. And then our normal right here. I thought I saw metallic. Specular is information. Yeah, so it's like it's not metallic, it's stone. So it didn't have any information there. Kind of figured that out. Nor does it have really specular. So we're good. Save it. And we can already see that we have a much more compelling texture here than just the image by itself. Now, very nice. Stone. Cool. Now, this is not the scale I want, though. I want it to be much more tiley. Right? I want to have a lot more of these. So I'm going to show you guys a little trick that you'll use a bunch, which is I want to plug in some numbers into these UVs where I can adjust them. So if I hold down U and click, I have texture coordinates, and they're 1 by 1. And now I can change these, and I can like say, oh, let's make it a bigger number, or we can make it a smaller number. But I want to make it an intuitive system where I can use those instances to really like drive it in real time and make it scale the way I want it to. So I'm going to assume that these are just 1 and 1. It's a list, right? It's the two numbers appended to each other. And I'm going to create two scalar parameters called X scale and Y scale. And their default going to be 1. And I also want to give them a group called scale. All right, and I'm just going to multiply them by this list. So this is a list, right? 1, 1, and we need to make these two a list. So we're going to append them to each other. And then multiply it. And then the fun thing is we have to put it in all these boxes. And there's not a shortcut for this, like there is in other pro software. Cool. So that was it. Pain's over with. and we can scale if we make an instance. So instance, and then drag it on, and then when I open it up here, I now have X scale, right? And this is how you're going to build a lot of worlds like this. And you have scale. And now if this had like text on it or something you really wanted to have centered, what you also need to have is also need to have a position, and that's just adding in 2 more of these, and instead of multiplying it, just adding it to the list. So if I don't want to have to redo all that crap again, if I hold down Control, I can drag all of them at once. Boink! Oh, no shit. I missed. Alright, one more time. Boink. There you go. Save a little time. Alt will disconnect them. So I just need to make 2 scalars again. X position and Y position. And once you make this once on your computer, just copy and paste it into all your projects. And then this needs to be 0 by default because we don't need to add anything to it. And this is basically an offset. So now I have these. You see I'm moving left to right now. Same thing that panner was doing, but this is just to get in the right spot. So you'll use the combination of these 2 things to, like, if you have any like logo that you want to make sure it's centered in the right scale, this is a really useful way of messing around with materials and doing them that way. Cool? Get in there, just look at that. Doesn't it look great? Cool. I feel like I cheated us out of more Fresnels. These 2 guys, just go away then. They're baiting me. Alright, we're moving on. Okay, cool. So, we're going to get into a little bit of more animation. You know how we were doing making things animate with a timeline, where we very easy to like do doors opening, things that aren't that intricate. But if we want to start getting into more keyframe animation, and later on we start doing actual skeletal animation on like characters, we're going to use a thing called sequencer. And if anyone is familiar with, most of you guys probably are, nonlinear editors like Final Cut Pro and stuff, this is Unreal's attempt, or very successful attempt, at using a nonlinear editor inside your game engine, so that you can have everything being driven on a slide, on a timeline that you can drag your mouse back and forth on. And it's how you do cutscenes, but it's like when we did the project inside of in New Zealand that I showed you guys last week. The entire thing was a giant hour and a half long sequencer, and everything was happening. We could drive different parameters in real time, but everything was going in a direct path at a direct speed, which we can control. So sequencers underneath cinematics. And we're just going to do a level sequencer. It just happens in this one level. A master sequencer you do later if you're going to bring in a bunch of level sequencers and combine them all together. It's like kind of a nesting thing. I can call it whatever I want to. I'll call it World on a Wire sequencer. And there it opens up, and as I promised, a little playhead slider. And by default, nothing will happen because it's not set to autoplay. Here's the details for our sequencer. We want to make it autoplay. You can also trigger that in a blueprint so that if you overlap something, then it can play a sequencer and trigger a cutscene. We're just going to do it from the very beginning. For right now, don't loop. It's doing it by 30 frames per second for 150 frames, so that is 5 seconds. Right? So we have a 5-second sequencer right here. The green is the beginning, the red is the end. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's pretty small on the screen. And then there's a lot of shortcuts. I use this a lot, so I have them on my screen so I can look at all the shortcuts, so I can be much quicker with this. But for right now, Control and the mouse wheel scales it, and this is the easy way to kind of navigate in and out. Okay, so let's do something with it. Well, I like this light doing something, so let's put that in and just drag it in. So it already has some things that we can drive. It has intensity, so we can animate intensity, and we can animate the color, and we can also animate the, I'm going to add in a transform, so we can animate the position. These are all things you could do. Look at all that stuff that you can drive inside a sequencer. Everything that's in the details. So you could do it with like blueprints and make it procedural, or you can set up with keyframes so that it's doing exactly the thing you want it to do. Cool. So I have a couple settings here. I want to make sure that, where's the settings? Settings. I don't want my cursor out of the playback range. I want to be able to go all the way back to the beginning, and it's 0. And at the end, it stays in at 149. Cool. So I'm locked in there. And the light's here to begin with. Let's add a little keyframe. I could do it to the whole transform, but that might get a little messy later on. I'm just going to do position for right now. And keyframe, X, Y, and Z. Then at the end, I want it to be here. Keyframe. Why'd you keyframe over there? That's weird. Let's put auto key on. Auto key. Alright, so what are you doing? You're going back, forward, and back. That's fine. So I have auto keyframe on now. As I move around, it'll change things. And so let's also do something with this sphere, since lights are kind of hard to see once we're in play mode. So let's throw it in there. And animate it as well. We can start there. And then we're going to animate it up. And then it can come back down. So I hit play. Let's go look over here. Right? And then it returns back to where it was before. If I want to make this larger, I just drag the red playhead or red end thing over here. I can also look at this as just seconds. Might make it easier on myself. And lock it into, because I'm more interested in seconds. There we go, 15 seconds. Let's do snapping to the interval. Cool, cool. There it is. Oh, things are always changing. Anyway, now I can just move these over and drag them. So what's also cool to do, though, is do roller coaster rides. All right. So let me show you how much time we have for just enough time. I'm going to show you guys how to make a custom pawn with. We're going to joust with one of these balls and try to break it. Okay. We could do like 10 minutes. So blueprints. I'm going to create my own VR pawn from scratch. VR PWN, if you shortcut for that. All right. And we've only done actor blueprints really so far, which are kind of anything could be an actor blueprint. As we start creating new kind of blueprints, some things are more tailored to specific things you want to access. And this pawn, the main thing is when I have it selected at the root component, it has the ability to be possessed and unpossessed. We talked about that the other day, is that you can, pawns are possessed, and they that's when you have ownership over them, and you can have multiple pawns. You could be a airplane, and then you could be a car, and then you could be a first person, and you can just unpossess and possess and switch pawns out as you go around. This one by default, we're going to make it be player 0, And now let's make some VR stuff happen, okay? So at the root, I'm going to add in a VR root. I'm going to add in a scene component, which I'm going to call VR root with a question mark. Nah, VR root. All right, and from here I'm going to put in my camera. And then I'm also going to add in motion controllers. It's that easy. The motion controller, the setting you care about is that it has a hand, right? Where'd that go? Do I have the right thing? Motion controller. By default. Huh. There we go. This is by default a left hand. They switched it around on me. And then, so I'm going to name this one L. And then I want another motion controller for my right. And I want it parented to the VR root as well. And this will be called _R for right. Cool. And then I change the hand, so the motion source is from the right hand. That's that easy. But these things are going to be invisible. These are just like nulls. These are just like data. And we need to actually give it a representation of something. So I'm going to take a cone and make it really long, so I have like little jousting spikes. Okay? So underneath each of these, I'm going to add in a cone. Rotate it so it's like pointing out like that, all right? And then I'm going to squish it a little bit to make it more pointy. And now the offset, though, is that my controller is right here, and that's where the pivot is of this. I want it to be at the very end of my hand, so I'm going to move it right there. Cool. So I got one right here. Just give it a name, cone. Right. Duplicate it. Parent it to the other one. Oops. Gave it the wrong name. Cone left. And then cone right. So I got two of them. And the only thing I need to do is tell it what kind of headset I'm using. I want to set tracking origin on event begin play to floor level. That's for like the Vive and the Oculus. If I want it to be a Gear VR or something like that, I want the tracking level to be eye level, right? So if I'm making for Daydream, if I'm making for the Quest, that's the only thing I need to do in this blueprint. Now, of course, when I hit these things, they're not going to do anything besides just standard gravity stuff. I don't have any interaction. They're not going to grab them. They're not going to do anything like that. We have to add that in later on if we were to. Yeah, Brett?
For whatever reason that VR headset's not connected when this starts up, will it kind of fail?
It'll just be a camera.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be a camera that's low to the ground because it's looking for that offset of when I calibrated the Oculus and I said I'm this tall, it's looking to offset me from the floor level, and it'll be super down on the ground. It'll be at 0, 0, 0. So all my animations will look like I'm underground at that point. That'll be the only thing. And so sometimes when I'm making VR pieces, I don't add in this floor level thing until later on. I make it eye level or something like that. You know, you can also interchangeably just use a regular camera. You don't have to make a pawn. There's just kind of mess around with it, and this is the kind of stuff where you, as you get more comfortable with it, you might remake your pawn because you like realized that you like it a different way. So will this work? Yes, it will work, but let's prove it to ourselves. So I want a pawn to be here. I want to start here. Bring it in. I'm not quite sure what else I got in this world. I think if I just keep it as player 0, it'll be this VR pawn. Get my hat. Wake up. There you go. Cool, right? So, and these have all the the physics and gravity, boink, 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 that that any other mesh has. And we can, if I'm not 100% sure, I can always add in a collision in there, but I'm pretty sure they have collisions already. So let's put something next to me so that I can have fun. This guy was such a compelling experience. Let's duplicate it. There you go. Oh, I got to set it to simulate physics so that it will roll. Let's move it forward for a little bit. So down here, simulate physics, on. Let's save everything, because I've done a lot. Try again. All right. Did you guys see that? That was super fun. So you can imagine some sort of thing spawning a whole bunch of these and having a whole interactive zoo of things. Now, you saw how far it went flying? Like, it's because these objects have mass, and when you bring them in and import them, the reason why it takes so long to import stuff is especially some of the tilt brush stuff is because there's a lot of polygons and it's trying to calculate these collisions and these mass and stuff like that. This is an object that comes from the engine, and I can override the mass because it's setting by default in kilograms it's 100, but I can override that and make it 1,000. And it'll have a lot more heft to it. Looks like the Oculus button. Go back. Come back. Come back. Ah! Now it's got the movement. Look at that. It's got the inertia. Come back. Come back. Super fun. All day. All right, and we had our mesh, right? We had our tilt brush, so we can bring this in and like bat it around and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's cool. But I want to get a running start at this, so I'm going to add my pawn to the sequencer so that I can fly. And it's just as easy as 1, 2, 3. So you see how I have it selected now shows me what's inside the camera, so I can kind of get an idea. I can pin that so no matter what I'm selecting, it's always showing me what the camera can see. I'm going to drag the camera here. And at the beginning, I want to be amongst my foliage, hiding out. That looks beautiful right there. Okay? And so let's add a track for transform. And I'm going to add one for location. Okay, now you see there's also scale and rotation for that one, but it's not, scale doesn't do anything, and you don't really want to do rotation. Try it out, but you'll make yourself sick. That's when you're literally taking somebody's head and doing that, and it's like, do it so you know not to do it. Like, don't do it around me because you might get sick. But I'm just going to do location, and then come to halfway through. Actually, the easiest way to do it is to go all the way to the end and do where you want to end up. Amongst the foliage over here. All right. And you see these tick marks? Let's see, how are we going to see this? There's these little tick marks which for each frame. And it's super hard to see. There's one right there, there's one right there. You want these to be evenly dispersed because that's a constant velocity. Speeding up and slowing down is also can make you kind of nauseated. So if you're going to do a roller coaster ride, you might want to play with making people nauseated because that's the whole point, or maybe not. You can kind of see the tick marks better when I'm further away. You'll have to see it on your own. But anyway, I can now scrub and see this animation happen. But I want to take a dip down in the middle to hit our ball. Cool. And you see how it adjusted there? And it shows me that everything should slide right through, right over, and I should be able to hit it. Cool. And because I did it kind of in the middle, it's going to be a consistent velocity. The other way to check for velocity is right here. I can see my curves. So let's go to location and look at my curves. And I can see, oh, you see these are actually curved keyframes, and because of what I was telling you guys, I want to make sure they're linear keyframes. So I'm going to switch it to linear, and that way it's a straight line, and it'll be a consistent velocity. I'll jolt out, and I'll end in a big stop, right? And you can hit play right here and like preview it how it look. Whoa! This is gonna be awesome. Right through it, and then escape. All right, let's do it. Okay. And so I already set the sequencer to autoplay. So that should be good. That's one thing that people forget to do, is making it autoplay or triggering it at some point. Let's get rid of our keyframes. And also sometimes leaving the sequencer open can kind of mess with things. I often just close the sequencer, make sure everything is not being influenced by that. There we go. Cool. So what's going to happen? Here I go. Here I go. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I missed it. Remember, it's higher, right? Because of it's from floor level. So I can make it a little bit lower. I was afraid that it wasn't going to be. So let's find it again. So now I opened it up again. And let's just make this lower. I'm going to zoom to the keyframe and select the thing. And yeah, that should get it. And let's get back. I gotta hit it. Poke, poke, poke. Right? Right? Interaction. Making VR is like the most instant gratification for programming ever. It's so much fun to make it. So that's great. I just want to do one last thing, and I was going to do the destructible mesh thing and see if we can get that to trigger. So I don't want it to roll. I want it to crumble. So I'm going to take this sphere, and because it's part of the engine, it's not actually in my my project. If I look for content browser, it took me to my engine content. Did you guys see that? This is everything that's inside the engine. You can hide it and unhide it by, I don't want to see engine content. And so now it's not there, and that's by default the way it's set up. But this sphere is not an asset I brought in, it's part of the engine. And if you mess around with your engine, you get lots of fun. But also, sometimes when you go open your Unreal Epic Games launcher, it'll say repair. That means you probably changed something that was part of the engine and it wants to repair it back the way it is. What I do is whenever I take something from the engine, whether it's a texture, mesh, or whatever, I always move it to meshes or whatever, and it says, do you want to move or copy? Make a copy. So now you're not messing around with the engine, you've now made an asset in your project. And there it is. Cool, so let's do that. Or let's go back. Meshes. Bring it in. And put that Fresnel in there. Cool. But I'm going to go back to the mesh itself. Find it. And if I right click on this guy, at the very top, oh, it'll say nothing at all because I have to enable destructible meshes. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's no longer part of the engine. It's a plugin. So go to my plugins and search for the built-in, and it's called like what, Apex or something? Apex Destruction. They changed the engine that was running it, so with the restart, yes, you can save all my changes. Completely forgot about that. Yeah, no, it was only recently that it happened. used to always just be part of it. Oh, well, shoot, it's already 9 o'clock. This might take a little second to restart the engine. Essentially, you can right-click, and it has a built-in Voronoi like pattern destruction engine in it, so that you can say, I want it to be 25 pieces, and then when you hit it with a certain amount of velocity, it'll break. But only when it reaches that threshold will it break. So it could do normal things like roll around, but only when we hit it will it crumble. And that's, there's tutorials for this online. There's tutorials for everything, except for how to do roller coasters. And that was the last thing I wanted to show you guys was structural mesh today. But we got through everything. Let's do it real quick. So level. We're so close. So here's our dude. Let's go over to him. If I right click, I could say create destructible mesh. I don't know why it has such noir-like lighting in here. But we say what's the damage threshold? So we have to reach past 1. What's a unit of damage? I don't know what measurement that is. And then how many pieces? I want 25 pieces. Fracture? It's now like Swiss cheesing it up. Right? So that's built in. And so I have the Fresnel on the outside, but I don't have a material on the inside. So it's going to look like, if I go back to the structural mesh now, it's right here next to it. See, it says sphere and added a DM to it. And if I come back in here, I can change the settings if I want to. But I don't have a chunk parameter. Oh, well, you need to put a material on the inside too, is basically what I'm trying to get at. So the Fresnel on the outside, let's bring it into the world. It has 2 elements now. Over here. So let's do Fresnel and make it inside and out. But you can also make it so a particle explodes when you do it as well. Don't restore. Save. It's very interesting. I thought they used to let you do particles when it explodes. It's somewhere in there. Anyway, so whenever it's ready, we'll see the materials. Okay, I have no idea which ones we're gonna hit. We're just trying to hit all of them, and then we'll go home. But it can also just like have gravity and fall down on its own and break. It all depends on if it has enough mass to reach this threshold. Let's see. Then I hit play. I missed it. I'm so excited I missed it. All right. Getting all you guys. No! He didn't even react at all. It's like it didn't have collisions. Something I'll have to look into. I was just trying to tack that one on. I think that which one's it? This one has to have simulate physics on. And we'll try one more time. Didn't do it. No, it didn't break. It needs a lower threshold, which was just the setting right here. Last time, I promise. Keep you here all night long. Oh well. Now your goal is to make a destructible mesh work for your homework. And I'll do it as well. Cool, thanks for sticking around. I know this is